Sup, Dad?
Welcome to This Dad Reads, a pop culture podcast on books, shows, games, and all things nerdy. What is going on, my friends? It is Jason here, back with another episode of This Dad Reads, the podcast. And I barely made it here, you guys. I mean, we made it to February. It's the second month of the year 2025, and it feels like 2025 has been so long already. I know that there was sentiments around this on social media throughout all of January and how long it felt. But on a personal note for myself, January felt extra off just because I was dealing with some weird stuff in my own life, which I'll get into in a second. So I guess long story short, I'm glad we're here. I'm feeling more normal than I have in a while. And I'm excited to just be here and engage and talk about books, and especially excited to have Chelsea from the Space Wizards Book Club back on the show, just having a nerd out session with her. I'm excited to just kind of get back to normal. So kind of like I said before, literally the second weekend in January, I was wearing Croc slides, which first of all, I don't recommend to anyone if you are over 40 like I am. I took a step out my front door and rolled my foot, and I fractured a toe bone. I literally landed all my weight on the sole of this stupid Croc charm, and I heard a loud snap. We had some friends over who were kind of like, what was that? I thought it was just, the sound of my sandal hitting the ground, but lo and behold, I fractured a bone in my foot. So cut to 4 weeks later, I was in a boot for 4 whole weeks. I couldn't drive because I was in a boot. Thankfully, I wasn't completely no weight bearing, so I could kind of get around, but for myself to heal up as best as possible, that was what I was doing. So I was remote working for a whole month, which I feel like I can do fairly well, but that long and the way that my job works and my team works, it wasn't ideal. So by the end of it, I was getting to a pretty dark place, you guys. I mean, I really wasn't wanting to read. I just felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't leave. I needed rides everywhere. It was terrible. And so, thank God everything is healed. I am out of the boot now as of, not even a week ago as of this recording. So I'm back in the office. I feel like I'm back to semi-normal. My household is getting back to normal. So I'm just thankful. I guess all that to say, I'm thankful that for my doctors and for my family and for my friends and everyone who cared for me and reached out to me during this time. I didn't say too much about it on my socials because I didn't really want to be like a bummer or have it be like, whoa, woe was me, like I'm sad. But I guess in hindsight now I'm able to kind of talk about it, especially here on the podcast. I feel like it's a little bit more personal. So that is what has been going on with me in January. All that to be said too, I still read a ton of books in January. I had kind of more time on my hands to kind of get some of that stuff done. All that to be said, I still got a lot of reading in, and so I'm thankful for that. I guess I'm thankful for the small things, right? The little things that were small wins during that time. I'm going to get into all the books that I read since my last episode in a little bit, but before then, I want to talk about something that I mentioned on my last episode, which is that I'm an official rep with Inkstone Books now, which is so cool. It's so fun. I got my first kind of one of my rep books that is kind of part of this deal. It's Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I've heard really good things about this author. I haven't read that book yet. He has another book coming out from Tor this year, I believe. So it's a really nice edition. And actually that kind of came up randomly in my chat with Chelsea too. So just a heads up about that. So for the next couple quarters, I'm going to be getting some of their books in the mail and I'll be promoting them on my socials. Inkstone Books is just, first of all, they are the kindest, nicest people, and just kind of doing the work that like book lovers and collectors love, right? Like their special editions are just done with such care, and their packaging is done with such care. Like they literally ship from the UK to me way over in California, and these books are in pristine condition. Like they wrap them in so much bubble wrap. There's just so much care. Like they really care about books and the people who love and collect them. So I cannot sing the praises of Inkstone enough, and I'm really excited to kind of have this new experience with them. There are some new Star Wars books coming from them soon as well. I can't really say much about it right now, though by the time this episode comes out, we might be talking about it. So all that to be said, just keep an eye on socials. I think Inkstone is great. Give them a follow. They do have a subscription box that I do believe is sold out at this moment, but they have tons of special editions that are always coming out that for the most part, aren't super hard to get. I mean, that's what I love about them too, is they're pretty big and pretty well known, but they're not so much that you cannot get the products that you want. A lot of they do limited edition, so you got to be on top of it. But they really make it as accessible as possible for folks. It's really cool. Anyway, that is going great. I'm loving it so far. I also want to talk about if you followed me on social media, I recently won a contest that my friend Nerdy Brent, did a couple months back in partnership with this design business called Gory Comics, and they design, like, they have some Star Wars designs, some other kind of manga anime designs that they like, but I won a Star Wars t-shirt from Brent's Instagram, which is really funny because we had just been chatting, and their designs are so cool. And I'm kind of doing the same thing with them now. Like, they sent me a couple more shirts, so I'm going to be kind of talking about Gory Comics more on my socials and here on the podcast. Like I said, they just do really cool Star Wars designs, and they're always kind of putting new ones out there. And keep an eye out too, because they are potentially diving into more bookish stuff. So I recently got sent kind of a test of a bookmark that they're testing out, and the designs look really cool. It's coming off from some of their Star Wars designs. So they're kind of figuring that out right now. So keep an eye out for that maybe in a little bit. But I just want to say on the show, like, companies like Gory Comics and Inkstone Books, they are just doing it because they love it. And I love that. Like, they're not out there trying to, like, make the most money. Obviously, they're trying to be profitable and run a business, but they are just passionate fans who love, the bookish Star Wars communities. And so I love just coming alongside and just cheering them on in whatever little way I possibly can to, like, get other people to, engage with them, even if it's just to see their stuff or even to buy a shirt or to buy a book. Like, I just think it's so cool. And I just want to support people who are out there kind of doing their passions. And I do have codes for both of those places if that's of interest to you. So if you check out my profile on Instagram, I have my kind of rep codes for Inkstone and for Gory Comics. So check those out online and definitely give each of them a follow. They are doing some really cool stuff and are definitely deserving of your time and attention. Okay, so you know what? I realized last month it was a very weird month for me, like I said before. And it was so weird that Casey78 didn't even join me for the podcast. So that is not acceptable to me. So Casey, get back in here. Where are you? I know. I am so sorry. I was so out of it last month. Like I said, January was so weird. I feel like even our relationship suffered a little bit in that time. So I apologize, Casey. Like, I never want to leave you out ever again. And I want to make sure that you have every opportunity to engage with the listeners and the Star Wars fans out there. I appreciate that so much, my man. Hey, while we're at it, I'm just about ready to get talking about all the books and games and things I've been doing lately. Can you cue up that music for me? All right, thanks a lot. So since my last episode, I have read a number of Michael Connelly books. My wife and I's buddy read journey continues. We have plenty on the docket to keep us busy for the majority of this year. So some of the Michael Connelly books we finished were The Concrete Blonde, which is really good, stands the test of time, still one of my all-time favorite Harry Bosch books. We also read The Last Coyote, and we finished Trunk Music. We are currently reading the 6th Harry Bosch book as we speak, so I am excited to see how many Bosch books we can get under our belt in the month of February. And while I'm on the topic of Michael Connelly, he actually has a new book coming out this summer called Nightshade, and it's the first book he's done in a while that is has a completely new character, a new setting. He's a new police officer, a new mystery, and I am excited to announce that I'm officially part of the Michael Connelly street team to help just spread the word about this new book. So I actually got the galley of his new book literally yesterday, and I am so excited to jump into this book. I think I'm going to pace it out a little bit because I don't want to read it too soon as it doesn't come out till May, but definitely keep an eye on my socials for tons of new announcements and things about Michael Connelly's upcoming book, Nightshade. Another book I read is called Head Cases by John McMahon, published by Minotaur Books. This was a book that I was able to read early thanks to the publisher and NetGalley. And this is a fun, new kind of thriller FBI centric book. This like kind of kooky FBI unit is chasing down a serial killer of serial killers, and they're kind of like a ragtag group, and they're in this group just because they kind of haven't fit anywhere else. And it's really fast paced. It's really fun. I wrote a full review of it on my website, so definitely check that out for more on head cases. And it wouldn't be a reading recap if I did not include some Brandon Sanderson books. I finished in January Warbreaker, which is a standalone Cosmere novel, and guys, within the first few pages of this book, I was already all in, and I am consistently mind blown with how Sanderson just comes up with worlds and characters that suck you in so immediately. I absolutely loved Warbreaker. I can't wait to eventually at some point revisit it. I hope there's more from this kind of little sector of the Cosmere that we get eventually in the future. So that one was amazing. And literally, technically I didn't finish this book in January, but it was since my last episode. I was 1 day away from having this book be logged for January, but I finished The Way of Kings, Sanderson's first book in the Stormlight Archive series, and this was the series that I was kind of like itching to get to, and I'm going through my Cosmere reading order, which I followed from someone on TikTok, and I can link them in the description if anyone's interested. But it was amazing and a little bit intimidating because, to be honest, it's a thick one. It's like 1,000 pages, and not to say that I'm intimidated by long books, but one book that is that long, I was a little bit like, I'm ready. But you guys, when I say that the pages flew by, like 100 pages feels like 25 pages. And I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but it just feels like pages go by so fast. And by the time I was finished with it, I had gone on this epic journey, and I legitimately picked up book number 2, Words of Radiance, because I wanted to keep going that badly. It's everything that it's been hyped up to be. I do feel like reading the first Mistborn trilogy first, and then reading kind of the standalones like Warbreaker and Elantris, really did a good job of priming me for The Way of Kings. I probably would have been a little bit overwhelmed if I just jumped into The Way of Kings first. So I would recommend that as well. So Mistborn is still amazing. I'm seeing tons of people dive into the Cosmere and Mistborn. It's an amazing jumping in point, and I will echo all of the other creators and people recommending to start there, that if you're interested in Brandon Sanderson, definitely start with Mistborn. But I am officially in the Stormlight Archive now, and I am currently still reading Words of Radiance, so there will be more to come on that in future episodes. Another book I read is called Volwer's Reign by Colton Taylor. I also reviewed this one on my website. This is an indie novel. It's sci-fi, kind of fantasy about these aliens that invade Earth, but it's kind of not the alien invasion that you're probably thinking of. It kind of twists that kind of trope of alien invasion on its head a little bit, where they're kind of trying to learn from humans and they partner up with humans. And I really liked how unique this book was, and it wasn't like we're coming to invade the planet, we want to destroy you, but honestly there's a little bit of that too. It was just super unique and really had its I feel like it had a good pulse on popular culture. Like if you're a nerd like I am, there's tons of references to things like Star Wars, Star Trek, even Brandon Sanderson. Like there's a Mistborn shout out in this book, and I was like, oh, these authors totally get me. They know what they're doing with their readers. So that was a really fun one. Definitely check out my full review and check out Volwer's Reign. Thanks to my friends at Penguin Random House Audio, I listened to a true crime book called The Secret History of the Rape Kit by Pagan Kennedy. This was really fascinating because it was kind of true crime and kind of more just like documentary style. I don't know, how would you categorize like a audiobook that's more of a documentary? But it's basically how this one author who writes for magazines kind of stumbled into finding the real history of the rape kit, and basically how this woman is the person who created it and hasn't gotten a lot of the credit, and this woman kind of had a fascinating life of her own. So it was definitely at times heartbreaking and frustrating and empowering and interesting. Overall, it was very interesting. So I believe that is a recent book that has come out in the recent past. So definitely check that out if you're looking for a nonfiction book. And then the last book I read since my last episode is Darkly by Marisha Pessel. This is a book from Delacour Press, and they were kind enough to send me a review copy in the mail. They pitched it to me via email, and it sounded really interesting. So, because this book, it's a YA kind of thriller mystery, but the twist and what got me hooked is that it's in this world of like board games. Like there's this female board game creator who has been dead for a while, but has basically created this whole world of board games that people obsess over and absolutely love her for. And the main character, Dia, in this book is a huge fan of hers and enters into this like internship based on this world of Darkly and actually gets in. And so she and some other teens are transported to this island, which is really mysterious, and like weird things start to happen and they get thrown into a mysterious kind of game. So the setup to me was really interesting, and some of the execution was a little bit iffy for me, but at the end of it, it had me turning pages. It had me wanting to know what was going to happen next. It was a really fun kind of standalone YA novel with some like tabletop board game thrown in there. I kind of wish there was more specifics on the like game part of it all, because like I said in my written review on thisdadreads.com, I was thinking it was going to be more like board game, kind of like Magic the Gathering vibes, but this ended up being more like Pokemon Go, where they're like experiencing games in real life, but it's kind of set up like Darkly is a tabletop gaming company. So that's where I felt like some of it was a little bit off, but all that to be said, it was still fun. I think I gave it 3 dad hats on my website. Check out my full review for details, but just a really fun thriller mystery one-off that was a fast read and a really good time. Like I said before, I am currently reading Words of Radiance, the second book in the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. I am also about to finish Angel's Flight, a Harry Bosch book by Michael Connolly, Shockers, with my wife. I recently started audiobooks thanks to Penguin Random House Audio of The Force Unleashed, Star Wars Legends by Sean Williams. This is read by Mark Thompson, one of the GOAT Star Wars narrators. I'm probably going to take this one pretty slow. I'm kind of chipping away at it in my morning commute. I'm also listening to Happy Head by Josh Silver, which is a YA book about this young man who's going off to this compound that promises to make him super happy, and I'm just started diving into that as well. There's a sequel coming out this February as well, which I am hoping to read and review and kind of publish this duology together on my socials and on my website. So definitely more to come on those. I am also reading Rose of Jericho by Alex Grecian. This is a book from Tor, and it's this kind of historical, weird, gothic mystery, which I'm literally like only a couple chapters in, but I'm hoping to have that read and finished in the month of February. So that one is in the works right now, so more to come on that as well. And then some of my other hopefuls, those are the books that I'm currently reading, which granted is a lot, but some of my hopefuls for this month as well is to finish Words of Radiance and jump into Oathbringer, which is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archive. And I am saying it right now, I'm putting it out into the podcast first, that I am committing to read more of my physical TBR books. I'm literally sitting here recording this episode looking at my TBR shelf, which probably since 2022 hasn't really moved much. It's a mixture of books that I have been sent, that I have bought at used book sales, that I have gotten from little libraries here and there, that I have bought from authors' websites. It's a mishmash, and they're all books that I know on paper, in theory, and as I'm looking at them, I'm like, I want to read that, I want to read that, I want to read that. But for, how it goes, for one reason or another, I have other books that pop up that I just read instead, and sometimes I do read a lot digitally, and so sometimes I'm legit not looking for a book to hold in my hand. It's just easier to check one out and read it on my Kindle. So I'm saying it right now, I'm going to try to commit to reading more on my physical TBR shelf, and I think I'm even going to go so far as to have you guys help me vote on which book I should read. So I'm figuring out a way, maybe in my newsletter or on my socials, to have people help me vote to pick which one, and then I will commit to reading that book. If anyone wants to even buddy read it with me to help me be even more motivated, that would be awesome. But I'm committing to that. I really want to make a dent in my physical TBR, and I've said that probably every year for the past 3 years, but I'm making a commitment right here, right now. Casey, you got to keep me accountable, my man. Okay, thank you. If I know you're involved, then I'll be even more willing to do it. All right, I want to talk a little bit about some tabletop games that I have been loving lately. The Mistborn deck building game, which I got in December and ordered from Dragonsteel and Brotherwise Games. It's so good, and all I want to do is play that every time I have a friend over playing games. Like, I've only played it a handful of times. I actually taught it to my brother-in-law, and he really liked it, so every time I play it, I just want to play it more and more. And there is a solo mode, but to me, it's just not as fun as doing it with someone else, so I will probably dive into the solo mode at some point. But if you love Brandon Sanderson, but you don't really know how to play, or you're not really really into board games, Mistborn, the deck building game, I think is a really easy way to jump in, and especially to experience the world of the Cosmere and Mistborn in a very fun way. It is really integrated with the story, and the art is amazing, and I just found out the artist who does them, whose name escapes me at this moment in time, sells prints on his website for this art, and I am so tempted to just go buy like 12 of them and frame them all and put them on my wall, but I'm gonna hold off for now. But the art is amazing, and it's just a great tactical experience. I know that Brotherwise Games also is producing RPGs. RPGs aren't really my thing, so tabletop is more my jam. So if you're kind of like me, definitely check that out. I think Dragonsteel has them on their website, and I got mine actually from Barnes & Noble's website, so they're out there. They were hard to find for a minute, but now they are a little bit easier to get, so I definitely recommend that. My family has also been playing a couple new little card games from Asmodee, and they recently sent us over this game called Super Meow, which is basically a deck building game, like way pared down. My wife isn't really familiar with deck builders, so I'm like, oh, this is a great way to introduce her. Then maybe she can play some other games with me. So it's really fun. Like the components of the little box actually are part of the gameplay. Like you turn over the box it comes in, and that's like kind of the little market, and it's really fun. I'm going to be posting about these on my socials really soon, so keep an eye out for that. But it's called Super Meow. And then another game which has like a built-in, win just for my family alone, is called Ninjan. And basically this is like playing rock, paper, scissors with cards. So there's like a group of 3 cards in the middle, and each person has 9 cards. They put one down and they try to like beat the cards in the middle. And as you go, you're gathering cards that some of them are positive points and some of them are negative points. So as you go and the middle cards are replaced and beaten, you are adding to your little stack. And at the end of the game, after 9 rounds, you add up all your points. So it's pretty strategic, but it's really easy to learn and fun to play. That one's called, like I said, Ninjan. So Super Meow and Ninjan have been family favorites on game nights for us, at least recently. So I'll be posting about those soon on my channel, so definitely check those out. And Casey, of course, we have to talk about, as of February 25th this year, a brand new Star Wars book is out in the world. It's book 1 of the Reign of the Empire trilogy, The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed. I had the privilege of reading this book early, and guys, I don't know if you're quite ready for the kind of book that this is. It is a political slow burn that will literally stop you in your tracks, in a good way. Me and Chelsea do talk about this in our conversation coming up in just a minute, but Alexander Freed is one of the best Star Wars authors I think that we have ever had. The Alphabet Squadron trilogy of his is one of my all-time favorite trilogies. I recommend it often, and I actually want to do a reread of it eventually. But this book focuses on an early time period of the rebellion's not even a thing yet, but Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and Saul Guerrera are kind of all trying to find their way in the new state of the galaxy. Palpatine has just taken over, the Empire is brand new, and Bail especially is kind of thrown because he's missing his Jedi friends, and he's really trying to he really wants them to get justice and the truth about what happened to them to come out. He and Mon Mothma don't get on at all, and it's just a really interesting time in the Star Wars timeline. This is not your typical like action adventure Star Wars thing, and the plot is relatively slow, I would say, but it is so dense and it is so beautifully written and well done, and very poignant for what is going on in our world today is all I will say about that. There are some new characters in this book that actually had me really intrigued, and in complete honesty, I was kind of thrown by the seriousness of this book and the tone of it, but by the end, it kind of steamrolls to the end, and there are a couple action sequences that had me on the edge of my seat, and by the end of book 1, I'm like ready for the next book in the trilogy. So my full review is up on thisdadreads.com, and my friends at Random House Worlds actually sent me the coolest PR box, which had like a print in it and like a signed book plate by Alexander, a sticker, and some like really cool notes, and it had a really cool like private confidential Jedi archive document from Bail Organa, and just a really cool fun way to promote this book. So thank you, Random House Worlds, for sending me that box. I had a great time, and just for sending me that book early. And I actually have an extra copy of this book now that I'm going to be giving away on my socials very soon, so keep your eye out for that coming up. Okay, KC, that was a lot. I mean, yeah, January was pretty long. We did a lot. Okay, I would love to play the Mistborn deck building game with you, Casey, but hey, you cannot cheat. You gotta like go in airplane mode or whatever it is that droids do. You cannot be like, I can't have you cheating on me. Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that. Thank you. All right, Casey, can you get the next section of the episode all queued up for me? Well, I am stoked to have my friend Chelsea back on the show from the Space Wizards Book Club. She is one of the people who definitely influenced me into jumping into the Sanderson universe. So without further ado, here is my nerd out chat with Chelsea. Joining me again today on the podcast is a returning guest and friend. You know her from the Space Wizards Book Club. It is Chelsea. Welcome back, Chelsea.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here again and chat with you about so many things.
We have so many things to chat about. Oh man. I was like, I got to get you back on the show because we got to catch up.
Yes.
Not that we don't stay caught up typically, but this is a way better format, I feel sometimes.
Right.
So first of all, how did the end of 2024 go for you? I mean, I know both of us are constantly reading, but like, how did the year wrap up for you?
Pretty good, I think. Yeah, that like time period between like the week of Christmas and like the end of the year, I am like, I'm not really, I'm like working some, but because the semester's over and things like that, I'm not teaching. So I just binge books. I'm like reading so much. Like that's what I'm doing like the whole time. I ended up reading, it was like 110 books. So I'm like, that's
right.
pretty, that's like more than I've done in a while. And yeah, like I was making all of my like reading wrap up posts for 2024. And I'm like, I had a pretty good reading year. Like I, started and like continued and finished some like amazing series. And I know that we're going to talk definitely about the Cosmere and Brandon Sanderson in our little chat today. But I look back so fondly at 2024 because that's like the year that like I read Brandon Sanderson and I got into the Cosmere and Mistborn and Stormlight Archive. So that's just like so, yeah, I'm like so excited about that.
That's awesome. And I know you made some Red Rising progress as well. So I mean,
yes.
That's good for me at least to hear. I know you read a ton more series than I do. So like, anyway, and that's on top of all the Star Wars books that we all read. So yeah, that's awesome. That's so good to hear. I mean, yeah, you're one of those 100 plus people. Like, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, we'll see if I can do that again. I set my reading goals below 100 because like I couldn't live with myself if I like made a reading goal and like I had to change it or like I didn't meet it. So I purposely set it knowing that I will probably beat it. I think I hit my reading goal last year in October.
Yeah.
Because I think my reading goal was like 80 and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna read a lot of books.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of did that thing too where I was like, okay, I think I undershot it too much too last year. And I ended up reading probably like 10 more than I was planning. But so this year I hesitantly made it a little bit higher, but again, not too high because I'm like you, like, moderate expectations of myself. I don't want to overdo it. Okay, great. I was just going to say like 2025 already. I don't know about you, but we are recording this in early February for my February episode. I feel like it's been a year already. There's so much going on like in the landscape of we are in the United States of just things in life. And January felt so long. So I don't know about you. I have an injury that I've been dealing with for like this whole month. So like life is happening and things are happening. So I don't know if you're in that same vibe, but I know that you are in the academic system and the semester's probably kicked off. But how has 2025 treated you so far?
Yeah, I was just like telling my therapist yesterday, like this it has been a year and it's been a month. There has been so much. And I know that you're in California, right? And I'm in Florida. So we have two states that are seemingly constantly in the headlines, especially Florida, for not great reasons. But yeah, it's definitely been a month. But it's been so interesting because I feel like while the rest of the country and the world is not so great right now, me personally it's been really good. There's just been some really cool opportunities, and just my students are doing well. So far we're like 4 weeks into the semester, and I feel like I'm putting energy into those things, like teaching, which brings me so much joy. Obviously love reading, even just like playing little cozy video games, and doing those things. And like that, like kind of keeps me going, because if I don't want to spiral into like despair.
Yeah, that's really healthy, I feel. And I feel like most people, well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to generalize things, but adults who have like careers and families and like there's other things that I feel like it's easy to focus your energies and attentions on those things. And it's easier to get caught up in like the whirlwind of like news and headlines and stuff. So I think that's a really healthy way to look at it. And that's honestly what me and my family try to do too. Like I have so many things right in front of my face that are like more important than sometimes the bigger issues of the world. Obviously, I try to stay informed and educated, but yeah, that's a really healthy way to look at it. Good. I'm going to take this as my therapy session. So
perfect. I love it. Yeah, I think all of us readers can agree that, we use reading as a form of like therapy, even if it is like, escapism or not. Yes. There's always, reading stuff that even is so on the nose, close to like our current reality. I know we're going to talk a little bit about The Mask of Fear. And that for sure feels so, not even coincidental, but like surreal to be reading that right now. But even still, like I'm still escaping into that. So
sure, of course. Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because that's definitely one of my, I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or what, but it's like reading is a good way to just like separate it all. I put my phone down, or like just on my Kindle. It's a great way to just kind of close off some things in a healthy way, I would say. It's unhealthy. I think that's what I always tell my kids. Like too much of one thing is probably when it starts to become like a bad thing, right? So whether it's screen time, video games, movies, reading, like too much of it can become unhealthy. So I think reading is a great way to healthily escape the world.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk about, you already have some upcoming exciting things personally or for Space Wizards Book Club, and Chelsea, for you yourself, you recently I know that you're writing for Star Wars Insider Magazine some more this year. So tell us about that. Like what do we have to look forward to for that?
Yeah. Surprisingly, I get, maybe not surprisingly, but I have 3 stories coming up in Star Wars Insider this spring. So 2 of them, obviously they're done, off to the editor. One's, I think, off to the printer. It's like completely done. That one's going to be in the next issue, which is issue 230. I think that comes out at the end of next month or middle of next month. Okay. That one is, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get them mixed up, because I work like 6 months in advance on these. So by the time they come out, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that like so long ago. So this first one is about Star Wars video game books. So I pitched this like years ago, actually, when I first started writing for Star Wars Insiders, one of like my first pitches. And it got approved by Lucasfilm to go ahead with. And I talked to Sam Maggs, I talked to Mark Oshiro, I talked to Christy Golden, and I talked to Alexander Freed about the Battlefront books, about Jedi Battle Scars, about Star Wars Hunters, and that was just so fun to do. So I really just kind of get their perspectives on like what it was like to write a like video game like tie-in novel, and amazing insight into like how all this works. I honestly love talking to the authors, specifically of like Star Wars books and like any sort of like IP, because it's not the same process as like a typical, just like a fantasy novel or sci-fi novel. And they're like, they're so thrilled to like be a part of like this world that's in the video games. Sam Maggs was like a hoot. Like I had so much fun talking to her. And she really like pointed to the fact that she like tweeted about wanting to write a Marin book and she got to do it. And so like that was like the best thing for her. And you know, Christy Golden is like a queen of writing like video game tie-in novels. Like she does, I think it was like Warcraft. She's done a couple other franchises or like IP, you know, things. And she is like surprisingly, she's not a big gamer, but like she's so much about like the story and the characters, which I can relate to so much because I'm not a big gamer. I'm terrible at video games. So I just like watch my husband play video games, especially if there's like story. So like I've watched him play like Fallen Order. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, you know. And so like talking to her and honestly just getting to talk to her because she's written like one of my favorite Star Wars books of all time, Dark Disciple. And I'm like, I know it's not based on a video game, but like I have to tell you what this book means to me. And she's like so sweet and just like, oh, that's so great. Love that. And yeah, really enjoyed that story. So if you want more, I feel like I'm like giving too much away. But if you want more, that one's in issue 230. And
nice.
Comes out in March. Yeah, end of March, something like that. And then the second and third stories are actually going to be in issue 231. I'm excited to have two stories in one issue.
Yeah,
like
that's cool.
Thrilled about that. The one is about the in-universe or like in-galaxy history books. So talking about the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire, talking about Star Wars timelines, some of the encyclopedias, Skywalker biography by Kristen Baver. So talked to Kristen Baver, talked to Chris Kempshall, talked to Amy Rakow, and I talked to Cole Horton. He wrote Chronicles of the Jedi, Bard of the High Republic, and they're all like, you know, the in-universe texts that are like, it's like Star Wars nonfiction, which is absolutely up my alley. I am like aspiring. I told each and every one of them, like, I aspire to be like you. And they were so sweet. I felt like I could talk to each and one of them for like hours on end because they're so passionate about Star Wars, like history books and reference books and things like that. And then the other story, I just got assigned this weekend. I got like a email from my editor on Saturday, was like, can you interview Charles Soule next week? And I'm like, yeah, of course I can. Hell yes, I can. So I just talked to him Monday. Monday. And working on that story. It'll be like a Q&A about the end of the High Republic and like kind of the journey and stuff. Obviously like no spoilers because it's gonna come out before Trials of the Jedi. And honestly, it'll probably be out before we even get like arcs of Trials of the Jedi. So that was fun. I'm like, I could tell that he's like really excited about it. And I'm like, obviously don't spoil it for me. I know you're not gonna spoil it for me, but like what can we expect? And are you really excited? Are you nervous? You know, type of thing. But it was so cool to talk to him because he started the High Republic with Light of the Jedi, and now it's like the end. So I'm like, how does that feel? Like it's been like 4+ years. Yeah. So yeah, lots of Star Wars so Insider.
Cool. I know that I know the way that readers feel about the end of it. So that'd be so interesting to hear how he feels about it. I'm sure it's even more, you know, emotional and all the feelings, I'm sure.
Yeah, I honestly think that, you know, by the end of the call, you know, the things that he was like saying about how the authors felt, you know, especially like the original kind of luminous authors feel about the end is really like it parallels how readers feel, where it's like this is such a big part of our lives and you know, we feel so attached to these stories and these characters, and the authors are like right there. Like they feel the same way. It's even been more a part of their lives because this has been in the works since like 2018, 2019, something like that.
So much time.
So they're like, it's definitely bittersweet.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely, I will be sharing out, or if you're not following Chelsea on Instagram or socials or her newsletter, more details about when those issues will be hitting definitely will be out there. So keep an eye out. That's always so cool. I love supporting friends, and obviously the magazine's so great. So that's super exciting. Can't wait to check all those out.
Yes, I'm excited to have the magazine in my hands again and see my byline and words at Barnes and Noble. So that's always fun.
So cool. So cool. So since we're on Star Wars, might as well stay there for a minute because we have other things to talk about, but we have to talk about Star Wars. As of this morning, mere hours ago, and the time that we are recording this episode, the news about the Bad Batch novel just hit. Sanctuary. Am I saying, is that right? I'm just going off my memory. Sanctuary. Okay, I had my tab up just to make sure I said everything right. That's so exciting. So, I mean, I think we can kind of live react. Like, what are we? There was rumors of a Bad Batch novel, kind of out in the internet world, but it's true. It's happening. It's coming out in August. It's written by a first-time author. What are we thinking? Are we excited? What's your vibe with this?
Oh, I'm definitely excited. I've been thinking for a while that we don't have any books like in like the new canon, the new timeline that focus on like the clones. And specifically the Bad Batch. We're thinking about like the TV shows that are out there and what kind of supplemental material we have. And I don't think there is any like Bad Batch, even like kids books or anything like that. So and I double checked and it's an adult book, and I'm very curious about that because I wrote on my newsletter like last week, kind of like the rumor going around about a Bad Batch novel. Like there was like a listing for it on like the Penguin Random House UK site. It had no details. We didn't know what it was. We just had the title and the author. So I looked up the author, and he's written young adult like thrillers, and I was like, okay, cool, like we could get like a young adult, and that kind of fits the vibe of the Bad Batch. We're thinking about the show, so I'm very curious to see this as an adult novel, like an adult story. Not that there's to me there's not that much difference between like the adult and YA novels in Star Wars. Like some of them are like very much like that's YA and not in a negative sense at all, and some of them are very like heavy, dark adult. But I'm curious to see like where this one fits in that kind of like spectrum of storytelling. I'm cautiously guessing that this is an adult novel, not primarily because, but like part of the reason this could be adult novel is because it's like multi-POV. There's multiple characters. The YA novels, if you look at all of them, they're mostly like one perspective. It's about one character. You have your side characters, but this one you have the Bad Batch. So like I think it'd be really cool to have multiple their perspectives throughout, and that's more common in the adult novels.
Sure, I could understand that. And the author's name is Lamar Giles. I went and looked him up too.
Yes.
So I think it seems like this might be his first quote unquote like adult novel, maybe even ever. I have my thought about why that is probably a little bit more not as exciting or interesting as your take was. I think like Random House Worlds wanted to publish the Bad Batch novel, so they don't publish the YA or the like, that's like the Disney publishing imprint. So I was wondering, okay, if they want a Bad Batch novel, it had to be quote unquote an adult novel. I don't know how that works. Is that off?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I know more about kind of like the publishing industry just being in like these like book spaces, but even still, like there's always something that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that worked like that.
I don't understand this. Yeah,
exactly. I don't understand this. But yeah, like I mean that could make a little sense too, because and it's honestly like, and not in a bad way. Like I am very surprised by this. I'm very happy. I'm very excited. I will obviously read it. I can't wait to read it.
Oh yeah, we all will.
But I think I'm just surprised, and I'm very curious to see the tone and the vibe of this, because the show, even though it is animated and it does have some very dark themes, as does the Clone Wars. but they are still geared toward like a younger audience. And especially because like Omega is a child and she's such like a core character, and seeing her journey and things like that, I would have been less surprised if they had like a YA novel with Omega, like having like her own like young adult novel. And then obviously the rest of the Bad Batch is there too. Another thing I'm very surprised about, and I think there was some like rumblings in our little Star Wars book community chat on Instagram, that this book is set during season 2.
Yes.
It's not like a gap between seasons. It's not after the end of season 3, right? We had 3 seasons, right? Yes. So I think some people are like, okay, but why? Like they want like more stories with them. But at the same time, I felt like the Bad Batch ended on such a wonderful note, like an epilogue. I mean, that was like amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I feel like you can include more characters, obviously, who aren't there at other points. And I liked it because basically I don't have my tab up, but it's basically when they're going back to the Pabu, when they're on Pabu and like that destruction all happens. And like I really liked that storyline. Like every time they had like a Pabu episode, it felt so like I liked it because it felt like the Bad Batch had kind of like found their home. And I was like, oh, and I'm glad obviously the way things ended, but like they're going to help kind of rebuild after the whole tsunami that happened in that episode. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Like I'm excited to go back to that because I felt like they got so connected to that community. And then like there's a story gap of what happened after that. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious to see like what happened between, during that time. Because that was like kind of an end of a story arc and kind of beginning of, a new one and things like that. And, sure. And as we go on into the next season and things like that. But I can also see why people are like, obviously we want more. We just want like news stories, exactly. Things like that. And, of like, there's, what does this say about like the future of like Star Wars publishing and like now the High Republic's ending and things like that. And I'm like, I understand like the concerns and things like that. But to me, I've always just felt like excitement for like the uncertainty. Because I am really curious to like see how I will feel after like the High Republic's over. Yeah. Because like the reason why I am here today, like doing what I'm doing, writing for Star Wars Insider, my newsletter, everything is because of the High Republic. Right. It all started when I just like reached out to Disney and asked for Light of the Jedi and Into the Dark to like review in like December of 2020. And then now I'm here today. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like this huge part of my life is like kind of coming to an end. Mm-hmm. So I am just as like curious and excited to see what next big, I don't know, like publishing venture that Star Wars is going to do. Like, I don't think that there's going to be another like High Republic level of publishing campaign and era and things like that. At least not for a while. Right. But there's still plenty of stories to tell. Sure. So
yeah, and I think if this is any indication, I forgot who I was talking to about this, but I feel like there's been similar story gaps in publishing with like a lot of the New Republic stuff, the sequel trilogies, like, and that's probably intentional. Guys, me and Chelsea don't know all the details of what goes on at Lucasfilm and Disney. We don't know. All we're doing is guessing. But what I'm guessing is now that the Bad Batch is over, once the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is out and quote unquote over, I think that we're going to get a lot more of these just popping into those timelines and telling stories that way. Because there's been no Mandalorian novels. There was a planned one that got canceled, and I mean there's been adaptations and stuff like that, but there's been nothing outside of the live action thing for them. And I think it's also for Bad Batch they're getting a hyperspace stories comic later where, Asajj comes back. So like I think we're dipping into kind of these little timelines, portions of the timeline once those like, and I hate to say that like they prioritize like live action or film, but like they kind of have to, like that's their bread and butter of Star Wars, right? So, and I agree with you. I don't think something like the High Republic is going to happen again for a time, but I think the High Republic ending with Trials of the Jedi is kind of like the last movie of Mandalorian happening. I feel like it's a similar thing. Like once the High Republic is over, once the Mandalorian and Grogu timeline is over, once the Bad Batch is over, then they can dip in. I think we will get other one-off stories based in the High Republic era. But yeah, that's what I think we're going to be seeing, is like dipping into these little portions of the timeline.
Yeah, I definitely see that too. And they've kind of been doing that here and there, as we're getting new High Republic books. There's still been a handful of, non-High Republic books, comics that have come out. I am like endlessly fascinated by the planning that like story group must do.
Oh my gosh,
I would just love to like one day just like pick their brains or like be a fly on the wall in like their meetings, not even to like, spoil anything or reveal, but just to like understand like the thought process and like how far out that they're looking, and having to, structure movies and TV shows and comics and books and all of that at the same time, and being like, how does this make sense? Like, coming out with this at this time makes sense because in 3 years we're gonna have this and this. Like,
exactly.
It's
and it has to be somewhat of a moving target too. Like, I'm sure that's I work in like, I have a scale of that in my full-time gig, and it's like it's hard to keep track of stuff. So that's why I agree. Like, that would be so wild. Like, what does that spreadsheet look like for them?
Right. It's it's so impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And like all the stuff coming out for Acolyte, like that all happened pre, cancellation. So like there's things that are happening now that have taken years to develop and plan for. So I think people forget that like it takes a lot of time to like figure these things out.
Yeah. And like as things come out, there's always people who are like, I don't understand why they're doing this now. And then like by the time like, I don't know, a year or two later, they're like, oh, that's why. I'm like, well, it takes it takes a minute, it takes a little bit to like, see the bigger picture.
Exactly. Well, what else are you looking forward to in Star Wars this year? I mean, publishing, anything, animation, what else are we looking forward to?
Oh man, obviously looking forward to Andor season 2.
Oh,
Between The Mask of Fear and then Andor season 2, I'm like, this is like the era of like, okay, this is like the Imperial era, and like just perspectives that we really haven't seen that much of before. It is like very heavy Star Wars politics, and that is Star Wars bread and butter. This is a political story, and I am like I'm reading The Mask of Fear, my arc. Shout out again to Corey for sending me.
I saw that. That's so exciting.
Oh my God, I was so excited. He was like, I have this copy and I'm not going to be able to read it in time. So do you want it for your collection? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you.
Book friends are the best.
Yes. So, and I am like savoring each chapter. It is, and I'm doing a highlight almost like every page, like the depth of just the content here. And it's eerie sometimes where I'm like reading stuff and I'm like, I know that Alex Freed wrote this years ago. I don't know how long ago, but like he didn't write this like, last year. This it is almost is creepy how like on the nose it is when it comes to kind of like reflecting what we're experiencing in our world and in our country. And I mean, I don't want some of these things to be happening, but it's just so it's like it like drives home the point that like these fictional stories in Star Wars are so important. to just our culture. And then even things like Andor, I also I rewatched Andor. My husband hadn't seen the full first season, so we rewatched it, and I'm like, and like binging it was like a whole nother experience.
Oh,
like it was so good. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get to like, Narkina 5 and like all this other stuff. And I'm just like, oh man, this is like so good. This is like peak Star Wars storytelling. And I'm reading The Mask of Fear at the same time, and I was like reading the Legends novel that just joined the Essential Legends collection, Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, and that's also like almost the same time as The Mask of Fear, but like in the Legends, continuity.
Oh, okay, good. I have the audiobook of that I'm gonna get into. So
it's
that's
really good.
Okay, good.
Yes, it's really good. Like I'm like, again, kicking myself for not like reading it sooner, but shout out to the Essential Legends collection for like making sure that I catch up on Legends books.
Yes.
Yeah, like and like reading that, and then with my book club, I started a book club on Fable. We read Rogue One. So I'm like, all of these things are happening at the same time, and it's so heavy, but it's just so good.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, is that it is heavy. It felt like, I like my Star Wars like action adventure-y, like, I like a thriller in there. Like that's my vibe when I'm reading. But yeah, Mask of Fear was heavy in a good way, and I love Alexander Freed and I love his writing, and I feel like it so matches that tone that you just described of like, it's a great book to come out before Andor season 2. I will say, if you're someone who doesn't love like a political slow burn, you might it'll probably slow you down. Like it slowed me down as a reader. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a fast reader, but it slowed me down because I was like, oh, this is different, So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I felt like I got my thriller action-y thing probably like towards the end of that book, and you'll see that as you finish. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I was a little bit like surprised. I guess I wasn't that surprised. I didn't know what to expect. By the end of the book, I was like ready for the next one, and I'm bummed. Oh, well, I'm curious to see how other authors are going to take these stories, because I really feel like Alexander Freed shines when he can like have an entire story that he did. Like Alphabet Squadron to me is like so good, and like again, he's such the kind of writer where it might feel a little bit jarring if you're not used to his style, but by the time that trilogy wrapped up, I was like, this is one of my favorite Star Wars things ever. Like it's genius. Like it's so, I think I almost cried at the end of it. Like, so I'm cautiously optimistic and curious to see how other authors are going to come in and finish the trilogy, because that to me is a very interesting choice.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have another example of a trilogy, like a Star Wars trilogy done by different. Well, I mean, we have the movies done by different like directors.
Of course, yeah.
You have that. So
I feel like authoring a book is so different. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested to see how it's gonna go. Yeah.
But I am cautiously optimistic, because I'm like, we've done this with the High Republic. Like they're the adult books are, like they are, Light of the Jedi, The Rising Storm, and The Fallen Star. Like they're basically a trilogy.
Yep.
And they're different authors, but I was telling Charles Soule that I was so, I think I can speak for a lot of readers of the High Republic and how impressed we were of like how they were just like seamless. The tone and the story was, they just flowed perfectly together. Even at the same time, you are still getting like a Charles Soule novel, you're getting a Cavan Scott novel, you're getting a Claudia Gray novel. And like, that's just like a testament to like their ability as authors and, like working together. So I am also really curious of how that's going to go with the Reign of the Empire trilogy. I'm thinking, and this is just like a guess, like they could have a like kind of phase 1 High Republic adult book situation where it's like, it is a trilogy. Like it's the Reign of the Empire trilogy, but they are maybe different enough stories. I can't remember if they said what the next two books, like if all of the books were going to follow like Mon Mothma, Bail Organa,
Mm-hmm.
Saw Gerrera.
Sure.
And maybe that was just the first one. I'd have to double check.
Yeah,
But
me too. I don't remember.
maybe it's like those three characters are like your anchor characters, but like they're going to introduce like other
Sure. Yeah,
perspectives, kind of like the High Republic has done.
Yeah, exactly. And shout out to Tom Holler. Like the editors are doing the work. Like obviously I trust them. I on the publishing side, I think they know what they're doing. And so like I know that I'm optimistic. I'm excited. And I think like we are similar in that way. Like I'm always excited for more Star Wars. I'm never like, why are they doing that? Like I don't need that. Like whatever Star Wars comes my way, I'm happy. And I'm hoping for that in 2025 I'm surprised again, because I was definitely surprised by Skeleton Crew. Like I was excited for it, but I don't feel like I had no expectations for that show, let me just say, I guess. And I love being surprised, and in a good way, I should say. And so I hope to be surprised this year by something in Star Wars. I know I will be, but I love having something to look forward to. I love like knowing that this book is coming or that book is coming, but I just can't wait to like pick up a novel or watch a show or read a comic that really just surprises me. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I love being surprised. I almost like being surprised. I almost like going into a show or a book with either like no expectations or like, okay, like I'm not like super hyped for it, and then being blown away.
Yes.
Like I was like that with Skeleton Crew. It wasn't like I had low expectations, but I'm like, okay, this looks fun. Like I'm gonna enjoy this. Of course, it's a Star Wars show, but I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Yes. It's just so fun, and I felt like it got back to like Star Wars roots of just like that like action adventure, like sci-fi, space type story. And honestly, I think about it, like most of my favorite Star Wars books of all time have all been surprises. Like I have all been like, like, okay, like, yeah, I'll read this. Like I want to read it because it's Star Wars. And then being like, oh my gosh, this is like my entire personality, especially looking at you, Inquisitor, Rise of the Red Blade, because that was not a book where I was like super excited for, because I didn't care that much about the Inquisitors for a time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now it's like literally my favorite Star Wars book ever. So
yes, and I'll shout it out too. Like you mentioned it the other day on Instagram, but Crimson Climb too. Like that really surprised me. When that came out, I was like, this was amazing. I tore through that book. Like I loved it. So I love when surprises happen in Star Wars too. So
more surprises in 2025. Just
please.
I don't know, like shadow drop a novel, and I'm like, yes, let's go.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I think the time has come. We need to talk about Sanderson, because Star Wars time, we're going to wrap that up because, guys, we got some other stuff to get to, mainly because you were definitely an influence on me, but like Bookstagram, Book Talk, the Sanderson world, it influenced me. And mid last year, I want to say, I think it was October, not mid last year, so fall of 2024, I was like, okay, I'm going to jump in. I requested some books from Tor because I have some contacts there. So I was like, Tor, I'm interested in Sanderson. Like, I would love to jump in and start reading Mistborn. And they sent them to me, which was super nice. And I haven't been the same. I have been forever changed. I am like, probably until the last page of a Sanderson novel has been read, I'm going to always be reading a Sanderson book on top of whatever else I'm reading. Chelsea, I love it. I love him. I haven't read a book that I've been disappointed in yet, and I've read about 5 or 6. I'm on the second. I'm on Words of Radiance right now.
Okay, you are. Oh my gosh.
I couldn't wait to start it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, you're one of the ones that helped influence me. So, yeah.
I mean, literally what you said, but I actually think I read Mistborn maybe in 2023 for the first time. I'd have to look at like my like Goodreads thing, but
okay.
And it was my first introduction to Brandon Sanderson, and I like liked it, but I felt like I wasn't in the place to really dig into like a epic fantasy, like high fantasy world series, trilogy, what have you. And I was like, no, like I have Well of Ascension. I'm getting the Hero of Ages. Like I want I want to read this. I want to finish this. And reread Mistborn. And I absolutely loved The Well of Ascension. I think some people are like, okay, well, it was a little slow. And like, honestly, like that's just kind of Brandon Sanderson's style, is that like he will not info dump, but like sometimes it feels like there's so much information, there's so much talking, and kind of like it's a slow burn fantasy. Yeah. Like that's how I describe it. And then at a certain point you get the Sanderlanche. The literal avalanche of just action and plot twists and reveals and everything. And like you are like furious, like binging a like 500-page book within a couple of days because you literally cannot stop. And that's how I felt at a certain point in The Well of Ascension. I just kept reading and then got to the Hero of Ages and just... I mean, one of my favorite books ever. Honestly, just favorite fantasy trilogy. I have such I mean, Mistborn, the first trilogy is just so good. I'm like, I think about it like every day. I think about those characters, like I miss them so much. And then, because Wind and Truth, the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive, came out at the end of 2024. There was a lot of hype leading up to, honestly, like starting the beginning of 2024, really, because there was like, okay, it's here's the release date, here's the cover, and all of the like Sanderson fandom, the Cosmere fandom, it's huge. Like, I mean, it's overwhelming how big the fandom is for one author. Like he has his own convention, like he has his own fan convention every year. And that's crazy. And so everybody, in my kind of bookish spaces online are, rereading the Stormlight Archive, or they're like, no, like I've been influenced, like you and me, to get into the Cosmere. So they're like furiously reading like Mistborn and the standalones and getting in the Stormlight Archive. And like I was there too. So I knew that I wasn't going to finish by the time Wind and Truth came out. I didn't want to like fly through it. I mean, granted, these are very large books, the Stormlight Archive. I finished Oathbringer at the end of December. Okay. And I've been on a break right now from Sanderson just because I have a lot of like other like review copies and Star Wars books to kind of get to. So, but I am hoping to get back to it later this month in February with the novella Dawn Shard and get into Rhythm of War. So, no, like I'm so glad you're reading Words of Radiance because that's my favorite book in the Stormlight Archive. I don't see how any other one could top that, but like that book was almost like not the opposite of like a typical Sanderson book, but I felt like from like chapter 1, like the prologue, I'm seated. I am here. There's no like, there wasn't a slow burn in Words of Radiance.
Not yet. And it's one of those things where I was thinking about this after I read, after I finished Way of Kings. It's so weird to think like, these books are so large. And like, to me, it's a little bit intimidating. Like, that's why I like reading digital sometimes, because you can't see how long the book is you're reading. You just keep going. But like holding a book that's like literally like huge, it's like, oh gosh, this is gonna, anyway, it's just a mental thing I need to get over. But it's so weird to think that like, because Way of Kings, I had heard this, and that's why I'd heard people had said to read Mistborn first, because you get introduced to his style, get introduced to the world. And I knew because of the length of the book, and I'd heard people said it's just a little bit more, it's not as easy to jump into. And it was weird to think like, okay, around page 500 or so is when I really got into it. That seems just so wild to think that like you have to, but it's so worth it. And like, there's just a lot of mystery and things you don't understand that start to click, into those books. So if anyone's interested in doing that, I would still recommend starting with Mistborn and then jumping into the other ones. A lot of things still won't make sense. But I have to also shout out my cousin's wife. She has, she's not on Bookstagram or anything, but I recommended Red Rising to her years ago, and she binged it. And she was like, I was looking for another book. She reads Star Wars books sometimes. And Heather, shout out if you're listening. I don't know if you're listening. She's going to probably be so embarrassed. But I was like, oh my gosh, you need to read Mistborn, like Sanderson. Chelsea, she's finished. She's already on book 3. She's on she's on Oathbringer already. And I told her this like in December. Like she read all of Mistborn. She's so fast. And I was like, wait, you gotta wait for me. And so she's like, I need someone to talk to. I'm like, you need to slow down because
slow down.
I can't keep up with you. But I get it, because once Way of Kings finished, the way that Words of Radiance picks right up, I was like, oh, I'm going. I'm in. I'm already like a couple hundred pages in. I've only read it like for like a day or so. So anyway.
Yeah, they're surprisingly bingeable. Like I think that's what surprised me so much, is just I have the hardcover books on my shelf, and I'm like, I'm not holding these to read them. Right. So I would go back and forth between like the ebooks and the audiobooks. I was able to get like the ebooks and the audiobooks like on sale. And that's what really has helped like read through them too, is like just putting the audiobook on while I'm doing things. And honestly, the narrators, I can't remember their names now. I know one's Kate, but they are fantastic. And I mean, they do the audiobooks for Mistborn as well. So that's how I also read the Mistborn trilogy, is through like the audiobooks and the ebooks. And I mean, I don't know how like Sanderson does it, but he is just like a master of just this like epic high fantasy that has this like overarching plot. Mm-hmm. But also you get to know these characters on like such a fundamental level, and it's such a treat to have a series that is just as much about like the world and the history and the lore as it is about like these individual characters. Right. Like you become attached to like the Cosmere characters so quickly. And like you miss them and you like just really enjoy their like character journeys. And like I also feel like I almost don't want to like get to the point where I'm reading Wind and Truth, because like we have to wait like 10 years I know. For the next one. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll just hold off.
How this man is so prolific, like we are not going to have any. There's going to be other stuff, but Grant, I hear you. Like Stormlight stuff, we're going to have to wait. But like, there's Elantris sequels coming. There's a whole bunch of YA stuff he's done that I'm excited to read. So like, just the breadth of his work, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be bored for a while. Like, I'm ready for it. Yeah, you're right. I was just gonna say like the humanity that he like injects into these things. Because I'm not, in all honesty, like a super high fantasy person. Like really high fantasy, like it's hard for me. So I've started and tried other books that I'm just like, I can't do this. Like what am I trying to? What's the big one? Sorry, like House
Wheel
of
the Time.
Or not Wheel of Time. I've heard that's good. Sorry, Game of Thrones. Like I tried it. I couldn't do it. Like I didn't get it. Maybe it was a wrong timing. It was a long time ago. But high fantasy, it's hard for me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust my friends. I think Sanderson might be it. And like you said, like the way that he injects like humanity and like you get to know them as people, and it's not just about the high fantasy of it. It's so cool. It's so fun. I'm honestly like, I've already influenced my wife to read some crime fiction that I'm really into, but like once we're done, I'm like, I think she would love Mistborn. Like she would love it because it's such about the characters and you get, it's so good. Anyway, and I was playing the Mistborn deck building game. I introduced it with my brother-in-law, which blew my mind when that happened, because I love tabletop games and I love deck builders, and there's a Mistborn deck builder that exists. I know you have it too. I don't know if you played it yet, but it's so fun. Like it's a great game. And the story and the art, it's amazing. Like I was like, how did they know that I needed this in my life?
I haven't played it yet, but I need to. We got, my husband and I got into playing Star Wars Unlimited. It's my first like TCG. So I was like, this is the one thing I want for Christmas. So I got that for Christmas. And I need to get into playing that. But yeah, like there's just, I don't know, like because I've been on like a break from reading Sanderson, I am starting to like miss it and be like, oh, I can't wait to get back to like, reading this world again. Very excited to get to like Mistborn Era 2, like the Wax and Wane series. I've heard so many people say that like it's better than the first Mistborn. I'm like, okay, well, let me see for myself.
Exactly.
And there's going to be more another Mistborn era. There's Mistborn era 3 coming.
Ghost Bloods.
Yeah, so I'm like really excited about that. I really want more confirmation and details on a Warbreaker sequel, because
oh my gosh,
Warbreaker, I loved it so much. It was just so beautiful and like, you know, thrilling and intense and like romantic too, which I love. I love like romance in fantasy and Star Wars, we need more of it. So yeah, like I'm not reading any Sanderson right now, but I have plenty of books waiting for me. But I feel you on the like, trying out high fantasy and like, wanting to get into it, but being intimidated and like it being hard. I did read I think the first 3 Game of Thrones books. Obviously I haven't read there's like, what is there, like 5 out now or something like that. I did read, if you are into like House of the Dragon, I listened to the audiobook of Fire and Blood, the history book, another in-universe history book. That was really good. It definitely reads like a biography, like a family biography, but it was good. So but honestly I feel like Sanderson is also kind of like a gateway drug into like high fantasy.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, like now I really want to read John Gwynn's books. I think it's the Bloodsworn Saga. Like I want to read Robin Hobb's books. So yeah, definitely try it out.
I will definitely. So that's kind of a good segue. So if we haven't influenced you to read Sanderson, I hope you should be now. Just get on it. I want to shout out to Mitch from that dude that read that book. He's like full in. He's like so stoked. I love it's so fulfilling to like see your friends and people who like read it and get it and love it too. I'm like, yes, come on, join us. It's so fun. I love it.
That is the beauty of these like online bookish spaces is like you influenced me really to read like Red Rising. And I still haven't recovered. But I need to continue on with like the rest of the books.
Yes, you do.
But I'm also waiting for like the confirmation for Red God.
Okay, fair enough.
So I can like time it out because I'm like, okay, at this point, like I almost need to like reread reread
I'm just
the books.
like waiting for you to read Lightbringer because like,
I know, but I have like 2 other books to get to that one. But I'm like pushing it out. I'm like, okay, just can Pierce Brown just announce Red God, please? And then I can be like, okay, great. Like I'm gonna finish these.
Fingers crossed for this year. That's the hope. That's the hope. Oof.
I'd even take December. Here. That's fine. If you want to do like end of the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, as I'm reading Red Rising, like I'm like messaging you. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then like you're reading like, Sanderson and like messaging me like other things. And I honestly like that's really like the best part of these like online bookish spaces is like influencing each other to read books and like knowing that you can like message somebody and like freak out with them over something that happened in a book.
Yes, exactly. Both of us are always balancing numerous books at a time. I think you read way more at a time than I even do, but instead of doing my typical last current next, like what is kind of on your plate for the coming, I would say month? Like what's on your plate this month that you're reading?
Well, definitely The Mask of Fear. That's the Star Wars book of the month. And then what else do I have? I mean, I'm a Fourth Wing girly, so I am currently reading Onyx Storm.
Okay.
I'm like halfway done with it. And I recently got into, hopefully I can influence the listeners to read. I am obsessed with Legendborn. I posted about it recently. The 3rd book in the series, the Legendborn cycle, is coming out in March. It's called Oathbound. So this is by Tracy Deonn. This is one of those books where I kept seeing people talk about it and how good it was. And I'm like, okay, the premise seems interesting. It's like contemporary fantasy inspired by like secret societies, Arthurian legends, actual like real world history, kind of like revisionist type history, a lot of commentary on like contemporary issues with like racism and things like that. It is a young adult novel.
I was gonna say, is it YA? It looked YA just from the
Yes,
cover. Okay.
but it is like, I would say upper YA,
Okay.
just on how dark it can get. But I read like the first chapter and I was all in. I'm like, this is so good. It is bingeable. I read like 300 pages in like 2 days.
Okay.
It was
Sold.
so good.
I'm sold. So
Yes.
say no more.
Yes, it was so good. I think it really happened because like everybody was talking about how Onyx Storm had, midnight release parties, and they're like,
Yes.
guys, we need to have like these midnight
Yes.
release parties for more books. Like we need to hype up like Oathbound and books by POC authors and things like that. So I'm like, no, I want to be part of this fandom too. Everybody's saying how good it is, and they're absolutely correct. Like it was.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That sounds so fun. I agree. And sorry, I asked you a question. I'm going to interject, but I haven't read Fourth Wing. I maybe will eventually, but like I was liking every single Onyx Storm post I saw, because I'm all for people being excited about their book, right? So I was stoked to see people at those midnight releases. I was bummed to hear people couldn't find the edition they wanted. They couldn't get. I know there's some drama there, but I was like liking every single one, because I'm like, no, I'm not gonna like harp on anyone for liking what they like. Like I was so stoked for all of you guys, and maybe someday I'll join. Like it's on a kind of my maybe possibly list someday, but I was just excited for everyone.
Yes. I mean, I would love to see like more midnight release parties for books.
Yes,
I think that
days.
Yes, like I think that these online spaces are really helping that like push, especially at like indie bookstores. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of them. Sure. At some point this month, I need to start my Hunger Games reread, because
I know.
Sunrise on the Reaping is coming out next month, and I am going to a midnight release party for that at one of my local bookstores. I'm so excited about it. So I'm like, and I wrote a review, or I posted a review of Legendborn, and I talked about how like reading that book made me feel like I was reading the Hunger Games again. Not that it's like the Hunger Games.
Sure.
I mean, there is like trials in there, but like it's not that same like story beats, but it's like that same feeling of like, you're a teenager and you're reading this just incredible book and you cannot stop reading it. Like I want to get back to like that era of like, us, 30 somethings or, 40 somethings, like millennials, older millennials. And we're just like, I want my like just thrilling, action packed YA novels that I'm gonna binge.
Yeah. It just reminds me of like back in, I mean, I feel like I was older teenager when like all the Harry Potter books were being released, and there was huge things for those, like, and I feel like that has definitely like gone by the wayside in the internet era. But I agree. I want to bring it back.
I think we're getting there. The Onyx Storm release party, I went to an Iron Flame release party at a local bookstore. That was super fun. Went to one for Onyx Storm last month at Barnes & Noble, and there was, there was like little coloring pages and like origami stuff and little quizzes and like trivia and stuff. Like that was, and it's like, that's all we really want. Like there were so many people there. So we could definitely have that for more books. I would love a Star Wars one. I don't know what we got to do to make that happen, but what if we need to like hype up having a midnight release party for like the final High Republic book.
Oh my gosh, for Trials of the Jedi. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's get on that. Like, Mike Siglane. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that to Charles the other day. But, hey, like let's do a midnight release party, or just like at home. Be like, okay, we're staying up till midnight. Here's my book.
I do feel like, sorry, I'm interjecting, but with Reign of the Empire, I feel like they're treating it a little bit different. Or Mask of Fear, they were giving out arcs like nobody's business. They were approving a ton of people on that. Yeah, I heard that they wanted a lot of people to read it early and review it early, and I think that there's packages going out with like cool stuff in it, like the books that I think are probably on the way to us are going to have like different stuff in them. So I feel like they're treating this one a little bit differently. There's more of a PR push, I would say. So if it goes well, then we can definitely take that another level with Trials of the Jedi.
And I am fine with that. Like I love a good like book PR box with like a bookmark and like stickers or something. I love that stuff. And I think a lot of publishers are seeing that even if it's like, you know, not necessarily like excited, not that they're not excited for the book, but like I think they're seeing that sending out just like a little bit extra like goodies.
Yeah.
And someone is literally going to be like post an unboxing like that. Yeah. You know, gives so much traction to and so much exposure to the book. I mean, of course, I love just getting book mail in general. So
same. Yeah. Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Yeah. And of course, like our, you know, like our pretty shelves and it's like showing off like different editions. I think The Mask of Fear will be the Star Wars book that I have the most
copies of.
Yeah. Because I'm like, come on, Inkstone and Goldsboro have like gorgeous editions that with like, and I've been asking for like Star Wars books with like edges. The little sprayed stenciled edges and like the designs. I'm like, oh, you guys are killing me.
Oh my gosh, they better be getting some. I'm putting it out there right now. Mike Seglain, whoever, Charles, we need some great editions of Trials of the Jedi because the editions of the special editions for High Republic have fallen off, which it's fine. It's fine. But I'm like, give this book what it deserves, please.
I know. I'm like, man, like some of my most prized possessions are like my out of print phase 1 adult books. Like those are so pretty. And I know that like takes a lot of like effort and time and like, you know, money to like produce those because like the dust jackets themselves are like such high quality, like paper and everything. But yeah, I would love to see some special editions for Trials of the Jedi, like the end of it, you know, or like, we're gonna have like a box set.
Don't get me started on that. The entire wave, all 3 waves in a big old box set, leather bound.
Well, like they did with the first or phase 1 young adult
YA
books, and they have like the paperbacks and the box set and the different covers.
And I feel like Sanderson gets it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sanderson gets it because I'm like, oh no, it's a good thing I haven't read everything because I would want to go buy everything like right now. But because I haven't read everything, I would want every leather bound edition. I would want all the pins. I would want
I don't have any of those leather bound. I can't do it. I'm like, I don't. They are quite literally just a like show off piece. Like I'm not gonna read these.
I know.
But
they're so pretty.
They are so pretty.
That's why I love omnibuses or like trade collections because they put all the covers of all the editions because it's easier than collecting them all. So I'm like, oh no, this has every like international cover art in it. Like I need that. Like
right, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Continue. The other books that are on your plate.
Okay, so I definitely talk about Legendborn. I like wrote that down. I'm like, I need to hype up Legendborn. Mask of Fear for sure. I think those are like my priorities. Okay. I also am listening to Starter Villain by John Scalzi.
I literally just got that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Okay.
I have the audiobook and the ebook, but like the audiobook is narrated by Will Wheaton.
Oh, how fun.
And,
nice.
Oh, that's such a cool.
Sorry, I'm holding up. Inkstone sent me. I have like the Inkstone's like special edition. I literally just got it yesterday. That's so funny.
Oh, nice. Oh, I didn't know that Inkstone had a pretty edition, but that's really nice. Might have to like. No, you're fine. I'll have to look to see because I'm like I don't own the book. I have like the library book just so I can like hold it. But I'm listening to the audiobook and it's so bingeable. So it's so funny. Has cats. I love cats. So but I've never read his work. Like and when I've looked at all of his books, they're kind of snarky edge of like some are like more sci-fi-ish. But it's really fun.
Okay.
Like cool. I'm glad I'm reading this.
Nice. Wait, did you started it already?
Yes. Okay, I actually have listened to a couple hours already because I listened to it on my commute. Yeah, it's not super long.
Well, now you're like influencing me to read this faster than I was planning on.
It's very I mean it's fast paced. Like it gets going right away. There's not like a dull moment in there. So that's fun. I I think I have a few books that I'm trying to get from the library or just like an ebook for Black History Month. So um, the one that I have is it So Let Them Burn? I think it's kind of like a YA like dragon fantasy. And I'm like, oh, I want to read more dragon books. So I've heard really good things about that. There's also The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. That is kind of like African history inspired dragon fantasy. There's a theme here. Because I know that I'm gonna like finish Onyx Storm and I'm gonna want more dragon stuff. I have like more dragon books. I'm like, my dragon shelf is like growing so much. And then I think that's like it priority wise. I reached out to Disney already like super early for the next High Republic like YA and middle grade books. I'm like, I know this is super early, but I just want to put in my request now. So I'm really excited to like maybe get Into the Dark or Into the Light soon-ish, maybe in March, maybe end of February, early March.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. When is it coming out again?
I think it's April 1st.
Oh, dang. Okay, you're right. I'm usually ahead of those things. I have my list, but okay, good call. Yeah, I'm so stoked for that.
Like, okay, well, I requested was it Beware the Nameless and Tears of the Nameless?
Yeah.
Like a couple months ahead of time. I'm like, I just want to make sure that this is there. Because I want to make sure I get it in time so I can read it. So I honestly I'm so looking forward to that. Like, obviously I'm excited for Trials of the Jedi, but like the fact that we're getting another, it's Claudia Gray's novel. It's Into the Light. It looks like it's a follow-up, to Tears of the Nameless. And I am so excited about like the end of the High Republic, not because it's ending, but because I have this feeling of like, oh, I know where we're going. Like, yes we're going to do it.
Exactly. I don't know if you need to go read Echoes of Fear. Did you read the little mini series Echoes of Fear from Dark Horse?
No, I haven't though. I think I've read the first comic. I am so behind the comics. Like that's another thing I need to like have on my priority list is like, I get them from my comic shop, but I totally forget about reading them. I don't know why.
Before Into the Light comes out, at least read that because even that final one that just came out the other week, it was so good. It was so good. And like they are telling stories in this thing that like you need to know. They're not just these little things off to the side. So like I feel like they're dropping like phase 3 things that and answers and things are plot points are happening that you will probably be like, when did this happen when you get to the book? So I'm just going to say that.
Okay. Yeah. I think now that the issues are all out, I will, it's easier for me to like binge them.
Of course.
But I need to get back into reading the comics. And and I know that like there's another series, is it Fear of the Jedi, the Marvel run?
Yep.
Yeah, like that's coming soon too. Yes. I was surprised by that they were ending-ish, like the story arc, I guess, of one part of like phase 3's Marvel comics, and then like there's another the final arc. That way. So
yeah, I'm hoping that they would keep it, that there's at least one more thing of Cavan's like that we get, in this.
And I think that there's going to be comics after Trials of the Jedi too. Like I think there's a few issues like the Star Wars, the High Republic Adventures. I think so. Like Trials of the Jedi isn't like the last thing. I think there's a couple comics.
Kind of what's been happening is like, especially in the Dark Horse stuff, the adventure stuff, like the comics are like trailing the story beats of the books. So like I have a feeling that like Adventures will wrap up, but it'll still wrap up with like what happens at the end of Trials of the Jedi, I think, probably. Or it'll line up. It might not. Yeah.
Midnight Horizon did that. When like the Fallen Star came out, and that was really like the finale of that phase. But we had Midnight Horizon come out afterwards. And then it ended on at the same time, but it was just telling a different story. Yeah,
exactly. All right. Well, thank you for being here, for joining me. I am so stoked that we made this happen. It will not be the last time, but if people don't know where to find you, how to interact with you, where can they do that online?
Oh man, where can't you do that online? I am primarily on Substack. So I am Space Wizards Book Club on Substack, on Instagram, on TikTok, and Threads. I'm trying to be better about updating Threads as well. And you can also find me in the pages of Star Wars Insider, the next 2 issues. So if you're interested in those stories that I have coming out, definitely, subscribe or, order them from your local comic shop or Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, there you go. You can check them out on Libby too. Like you can check them out from the library. I've done that before.
Yes. If you want to read them like digitally, yes.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. We will definitely stay connected outside of the podcast, and I'm excited to see what 2025 has in store for all of us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
You bet. Once again, I want to say thank you to Chelsea. Thank you to KC for being back on the show and helping me out. Thanks again to Gory Comics and Inkstone Books. Definitely go check those guys out and check out my codes if you want to grab any of their stuff. And until next time, my friends, there are plenty of books to be read, games to be played, and life to be lived, so I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. For more of my content, visit my website at thisdadreads.com for full book reviews, interviews, and articles. Follow me on socials at thisdadreads on Twitter and Instagram. This Dad Reads the Podcast is produced by Aravis Industries and me. Special thanks to my editor, Jeremy Tuttle, and to Coma-Media for the use of their song Bounce. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice and leave me a 5-star review. It really helps. Catch you next time.